Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Child Care Business Coach podcast. My name is Evelyn Knight. So, like the title says of this podcast episode, grace. Giving our staff grace can sometimes be a more difficult thing to do. Sometimes it's hard to determine, are they just taking advantage of me, or do I need to give them grace? And sometimes it might feel like we are giving grace so often that the times that we need to give grace can sometimes get to be a little bit difficult because grace can be something hard to give. So today we're going to talk a little bit about when do you give grace and how do we need to see things from our staff's perspectives, but at the same time, run a healthy business, right? Because childcare, whether you're in a private center, even a Head Start, you're still running an organization and you still have to make sure it is well organized and everything is flowing correctly. And bottom line, we have to make sure that we are doing what is best for the children. So that's what we're talking about today, giving grace as a leader. And even if you're not in childcare, this does apply to you because we're talking today about just how to be a good leader, basically, right? And how to come to your staff with empathy and love. And by the way, this episode is brought to you by Childcare Business Professionals. You can check them out at www.childcarebusinessprofessionals.com. And also, if you haven't got your tickets to the Childcare Business Summit, you got to get those before they're sold out. We are so close to being sold out. Make sure you don't miss out. It is life-changing. Now, back to grace. Grace is an amazing gift that you can give yourself and your staff, and it'll also help free you from the stress of always wondering, right? And I'm going to start off by telling you a little story. If you've been listening to me for some time, you know that I have a neurological disease. And when I first was diagnosed with that neurological disease, it was pretty devastating. I was having some major issues. And so when I got to the doctor the day I got diagnosed, he had a whole packet ready and he had everything ready for me to go. I just basically, he went through the diagnosis and then he gave me prescriptions and all the things. Well, two prescriptions really surprised me. One of them was kind of nice. One of the prescriptions I got was for a monthly massage. And he was saying that, with my condition, my muscles just clench so bad that he did actually prescribe a monthly massage. And so if you are watching YouTube, wherever you're watching, let me know, how would you like to be prescribed a monthly massage? Wouldn't that be awesome? So that prescription, I was like, sweet. Doctor just prescribed me a monthly massage. This is awesome. But then the next one that he gave me really shocked me. And it really changed how I see the world. It did. Completely floored me and changed my leadership forever. He handed me a prescription for naps. And basically told me that I would have to take a certain amount of naps every day. And I just remember looking at that and looking at this piece of paper. Now imagine sitting in that cold hospital room, right? And it was a little bit nicer. I mean, it was a neurologist's office. It was a little bit nicer than most, but it was still a bizarre experience to be sitting in a hospital room and then to suddenly just have your doctor. And he was a great, brilliant doctor, but he was one of those brilliant doctors that's kind of like super hyper, right? He just comes in and he was about my height and just very well kept, very professional, and just came in and he was like the go-to neurologist, right? So imagine just me sitting there, I'm waiting for a diagnosis. I'm in this hospital room and I'm waiting to see if I have a neurological disease or not. And he's sitting down and he's kind of nonchalantly, I mean, doctors do this every day, so they forget this is new to us, right? Sometimes bedside manner goes out the window because this is so normal to them that they forget it isn't to us. And he's handing me these prescriptions, explaining them to me. And then he hands me this other one. He's like, okay, and what he says to me is, you might need this one for your employer. In case your employer doesn't allow you to take some time to do what you need, you may need this. Well, he had forgotten that I'm a business owner and I don't have an employer. But I just will never forget looking at that piece of paper in my hand, thinking my employer may need this. And I looked at it, and it was a prescription for 2 naps a day. Naps. And I just looked at the paper. I looked at him, looked at the paper, and said, if one of my staff members brought me this, I would probably fire them. And he laughed a little and said, no, you wouldn't, because, there's protection laws. I said, you're right. I wouldn't fire them, but I would call my lawyer to see if I could fire them. And he basically talked to me that day and said, well, Evelyn, what's going on in your life right now? What is your biggest struggle during the day? And as we talked about it, he said, well, you're going to have to start taking naps. You're going to have to schedule a couple naps every day. And those naps are what's going to keep you going. And I'll just never forget looking at that and realizing how they fit in and why they were important. But as this tough employer that I was, and at the time, I had shown up to work with an IV in my arm when I wasn't contagious. I was physically able to work, but I wasn't getting enough nutrition, and my body was rejecting everything I ate. I couldn't stop throwing up. So I literally was like, well, I can still work. I feel fine. So I went to work with an IV. And if you've ever seen them, they just put a little PICC on line. There's these things that they actually look like little water balloons, and they give them to you, and they're easy enough to carry around with you. And I worked with an IV in my arm. So I've been a pretty tough employee who showed up for work regardless of what I was going through, how sick I was. That's just who I was. And I've worked with some pretty tough people that are similar. And I just will never forget the vulnerability of that moment and realizing, holy cow, I really need this. I really need this to function. I need this to run my businesses. And it's in that vulnerability that you can become the greatest leaders. And it was in that vulnerability that I had one of the best life lessons. It completely opened my eyes and changed my perspective on how I approached my employees' issues. And it really helped me to understand why grace is so important. Before, I was really, really strict. But what I realized was I don't always understand, and I don't always have the relatability, right? So if I'm lacking the relatability, because I don't understand what it's like for somebody who has such debilitating period cramps that they can't walk. I've never experienced that. But there's a lot of you out there. The disease I have is only 1 in 20 people have it. So who've never experienced having a debilitating disease that causes you to take naps. I've literally had to stop in the middle of Disney World, find a bench and take a nap, literally. My family was just appalled. There was hundreds of people walking by. I saw a bench. I'm like, oh, I could just go right there, lay down and take a nap. I've done it at the train station at Disneyland. Disneyland was a train station. Disney World was a park bench. But I have to. It's just part of a condition I have. And the relatability to that is hard for someone who doesn't understand, right? So for those of you who employ people, what would you do if one of your employers brought you a prescription for a nap? You think it was so ridiculous, right? I had a really hard time. And I know as I tell the story, I make it sound like I was just okay with it all of a sudden. I wasn't. It took me a long time to accept, more than a year to accept the fact. And I fought it. And I thought, no. And to me, I was weak. That's all I saw was I was being weak and I could power through this. But I couldn't. This was not a disease I could power through. And the funny thing is now I am very high functioning. I don't even need medication for my neurological disease. but I do. I schedule naps. I walk when I need to. I will literally create my entire schedule around what this disease needs so that I can be a high functioning, performing professional, right? But what are those needs that your staff may have that you may not just understand because you cannot relate? Doesn't matter what we can relate to or not. Until you walk in their shoes, you have no idea what they're going through. No idea at all. I taught a class this weekend and it was awesome. This is actually a part of the training I did this weekend. It's just a small part, but it was the biggest part that people were just like, how do we do this? And I also told a story about an employee I had once that she kept giving us doctor's notes because she had grandmas that kept dying. Grandmas died over and over and over again. And there was a point where I was like, okay, come on, lady. How many grandmas do you have? Like, seriously, how many grandmas? I mean, your parents could have only gotten married so many times and all of these things, right? And I think she was on her sixth or seventh death of her grandma when I finally was just like, okay, you need to start explaining. And by the way, if I went 6 times, that's way too many. I probably should have asked on the third. But what it turned out was she actually belongs to a culture where every one of her aunts is also considered grandma. They don't have aunts in her culture. If mom had a sister, they're considered grandma. If dad had sisters, they're considered grandma. They don't have the term aunt like we do. So it's a very matriarchal society. So it was actually kind of cool how everyone had that equal, like grandma saying, and there was very tight knit, very tight knit. So it was so fascinating to me that she really did. She really did have like 6 grandmas that passed away, and she really did have these funerals, right? So again, we look at our lens of life through what we know, what we've experienced, and what we've seen. But it's so important to understand that our lens might be wrong. Our lens is very limited. Have you ever seen those glasses when you go to Walgreens and places like that used to have them? Anywhere that sells a fishing license will have those special licenses, the glasses that you put them on and you can see through the water to go fishing and you can actually see the fish through the water, right? So think about life. That is how life is. We only see what we know. That's it. Our brain is not capable of creating perspectives beyond what our brain has experienced. And if you don't take the time to stop and ask yourself, maybe there's an explanation. You're going to jump to conclusions that are based on your limited experiences of life. And that's why it's so important for us to always approach issues from a place of curiosity, from a place of, I wonder why. I wonder why this person needs this. I wonder why this person is going to her 6th grandma's funeral instead of me coming accusingly, right? I wonder why a doctor would prescribe somebody naps. When it happened to me, I didn't even question it at first. I thought it was the most ridiculous thing ever. I was just like, nope, this is not happening. Nope, I'm too strong for this. And that's what I told myself all the time. And it wasn't until I was able to step out in vulnerability that I was really able to take control. Now, on the other hand, you do have to protect yourself from being taken advantage of as well. Because bottom line is the children in your center must come first, which means you have to have a high quality program, which means you cannot just allow everybody to get away with everything. Now, I'm not saying that you can't question. I'm actually encouraging you to question. I'm actually encouraging you to find out what is really going on. Sit down with your staff and you'll get to the bottom of it. If this is just a frivolous, I need a mental health day off, really, because one of their other friends has the day off and they want to go play for a day, that is not okay. And they can come to you with their mental health, and sometimes it's legitimate, but when it's not, it is okay. And and I would say required of you to hold people accountable, because a healthy person will not work in an unhealthy environment. So I do encourage you, hold people accountable. Absolutely, 100%. And hear them. Have an open mind and hear them, because your perspective may not be right. Your limited experiences may not be allowing you to see the reality that that person is dealing with. And sometimes, if things happen enough, as much as you love certain people, you still need to let them go. And I know that's hard. And you might see somebody who is going through something, or it's that person who's going through one thing after another, after another, after another, and they just can't show up. Bottom line, your job as a leader in early childhood education is to protect the children. As soon as anything starts spilling over to them and compromises the quality for the children, you have to take action. It's what you signed up for, becoming a leader. It really is. And that's what I would look at, is how is this affecting the children at this point? Leadership is not always fun. It's not always easy, and it's not always comfortable. And sometimes we do have to do hard things we don't want to do and that we don't like, but we have to do it, especially in this industry, because we are serving children. We are literally forming 90% of the human brain. And our responsibility is to them, not to the teachers, not to the parents. It's to those children, not to regulations, not to anyone's opinion. It is to those children. And it is our job to bring the highest quality, because what we're doing is literally paving the way for these children as future adults. I really want you to think about that. You are paving the way of life for these children as adults. Some of the things that you struggle with today, do you have a hard time solving complex problems? How's your time management? Do you show up late for everything? Do you have a hard time organizing your calendar? Do you have a hard time coping? Do you fall apart easily? How do you get along with others? Are you a team player? Can you even admit if you're not? All of that was formed in the first 5 years of life. That's the work we're doing. That is literally what we are doing. So if you're not putting those children first, you're literally putting their future at risk. Now think about that. And hopefully I just put a lot of responsibility on your shoulders, right? But hopefully that takes the heaviness of making the hard decisions off your shoulders, because it's not about them. It's not about you. It's about the children and doing what's best for them. So yes, I want you to show your staff grace. I do want you to come with an open mind. And I do not want you to allow yourself to be taken advantage of. And I absolutely do not want you to let your staff control your business or your center. It's not okay. And for those of you who are my members, this is something we talk about in office hours all the time. All the time. I tell you guys, if you let them, they will hijack your center. You cannot let them hijack your center. So I hope this was helpful for everybody. Let me know in the comments, whether you're wherever. I'm all over. I'm LinkedIn. I have some comments in here, and let me know if this was helpful for you guys. If you guys would like more content like this, I would be more than happy to go through more things like this, or just give me some ideas. What would you like to hear? What would you like to hear me talking about? And I cannot wait to see everybody at the Child Care Business Summit. We're only a little over 2 months away, right? Gosh, yeah. No, we're close to a month. Yeah, we're right at 2 months away. So I am so excited. Make sure you get your tickets before it's too late. Bye, everybody.